Hello there, welcome to Brian Lomax Movie Talk, and yes, it is that time. I've not given my thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home as of yet, but I thought, sod it, I'm just going to go straight to the ranking, and you can hear my thoughts there, because I'm tired of the whole, let's do a review of everything and then rank it, because it means you have to talk about all. Ask Sean Chandler about that one. It's just then you've got to talk about it why? One video is what you get, and you can hear my thoughts on all the movies in this one. So yeah, we got 11 movies to discuss tonight. As you can see, joining me is Cody Leach. I've asked him here basically on the pretense, shall we call it, of saying, you know what, I know I'm going to take some flack for my ranking here, because I've already taken some flack this week for some of my thoughts on the Spider-Man franchise, but sod it. I'll have someone on who may be in line more with fans, with the public. I don't know, we'll see. But he's here as the voice of reason. We'll see. So
realistically, I'm just going to be the other opinion that everybody hates and disagrees.
Yeah. Which kind of amplifies the point, really, that it is all subjective. It is all just an opinion. Calm down, people. We don't need to kill each other over an opinion. So this is officially my ranking. It's not really Cody's ranking. He has dropped a ranking video on his channel just last night. Go check that out. But as I do mine, I think he probably will lean into saying what his are, but I will leave that up to him. He's mainly here just to tell me if he thinks I'm smoking crack or not.
Smoking crack, Brian.
Don't we know it? In the chat, as usual, we've got Dale Strunk. Hello, Dale. We've got the Neil Blomkamp fan, whose name I'm not going to reel off. His social media name, that is. You need to shorten that, dude. Come on, just change it to Neil Blomkamp fan. That'll do. Some Neat, hello. Aaron White, hello. Matt Savage, Movie Noodles, Jason Voorhees, the Movie Man. Yes, hello to all you guys. Thank you for joining us. And do leave your thoughts in the sidebar as to what your rankings are as we go, and tell us what you think of our positionings as we go, or as I go, whatever. I'm prepared for a lot of smoking crack comments, but it's okay. It's just an opinion, guys. It's just an opinion. So we've got 11 movies. And I'm going to do them in order. It is Spider-Man and Venom. I am including the two Venom movies. So yeah, that's Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage. At this point, it's still hard to see just precisely which Spiderman's universe he fits in. Although he's clearly crossed into Tom Holland's now, so they're all linked in some way or other. So we'll have it, we'll include it. But yeah, let's get into it. So I've created some little videos just to introduce you to each of my choices, and we'll start with my number 11, which I consider to be the worst. And when I say that, I like all the movies on this list. Okay,
I do as well.
Yeah, there's not a movie on this list I do not like. It's just, to what degree in comparison with the others do I like it. So, yeah, here we go. Here's my number 11. Yes, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. So, yeah, the reason I've put this on the bottom is because, like, it's a good film in the sense that I enjoyed it. That's not flashing up there because I've already got text up, but that was a spoiler warning, people. Spoilers, okay? In fact, I'm going to take this down because if somebody joins us and they're not clued into the fact that it's spoilers, I need this up there for the whole duration. So I'm going to flip that off. and I'm going to put this on spoiler warning, okay? Any of the films that we're talking about here, we will spoil. We're not going to dance around things and because we want to get deep into conversation and not have to.
There's no point to hold back now.
Yeah. So Venom, Let There Be Carnage. It's one of those. It's a popcorn film in every sense of the word. You go, you stuff popcorn in your face. You watch things blow up. You watch gags. You watch fight scenes and a lot of CGI, and you come out having enjoyed yourself, but not really feeling like you've had any kind of revelation about the meaning of life. It's just, it's fun, and that's it. I like Woody Harrelson in anything he does. I like Tom Hardy in the role of Venom. He's always been a bit weird in the role to me, but in a way that I can cope with.
He owns it.
He owns it enough. Yeah. I feel he's a bit more relaxed in this one with regards to what he's doing. I just think that it feels to me like there's probably a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor. I feel like there has
to be.
Yeah, because it's so like breakneck pace with regards to action, and it's just like Carnage and Venom barely get together for their showdown, and then boom, it's over, and you're like, okay, they got there fast. Like most of it is about Carnage kind of escaping and then helping his girlfriend escape, and then finding Venom, and then boom, showdown, it's over, boom, it's done. And it's like I mean, I'm not the biggest Spidey guy when it comes to the comic books. I can't tell you the ins and outs of every story ever written, but for the short period that I read some Spider-Man comics back in the 90s, Carnage and Venom, they were the big, they were the breakout stars of the 90s kind of Spider-Man comic books, and there was no bigger villain at that point than Carnage. So, like I say, spoiler warning on the bottom there, guys. The fact that they kill him at the end of the film, that was a bit of a, really? You're gonna blow your biggest villain in the second film?
Yeah, that's the thing with this movie for me, because I'm with you. Obviously, we haven't seen Venom yet, so I'm one of the few minority that likes the first film a little bit better. And all the early response to this movie made it seem like if you didn't like the first one, you'll like this one. If you like the first one, you'll love this one. And I walked in, and just like you were saying, like they built up this movie so much and the character of Carnage so much to the point where that was the big stinger at the end of the first film, to where this should feel like the epic chapter of whatever Venom franchise we get. And I didn't get that feeling at all. Like, I love Woody Harrelson, but it just felt like Carnage was just another symbiote. There wasn't really anything about him that felt like this is the baddest dude that Venom will ever go against. And to the point where when they kill him, funny scene that he's just like, F this guy, and eats him. But yeah, the fact that he's dead and that's it, it's like, oh, okay. 80 minutes with Carnage, that's all we get, huh? Okay.
I mean, I accept that this, it's a comic book movie. So if they want to bring someone back, they can find a way to bring someone back, even if their head has been eaten and digested. This is the comic book world, but it doesn't really feel like there's any more definitive way than to kill someone off than that. It's like, it's just if you really want to take someone out and make people think, yeah, he's gone for good, that's the way to do it. But yeah, for me, it was the pace that the pace was like a lot. Most people, when they talk about pacing issues, that what they mean is it's slow, and it's just like it's just dull. It's too slow. I think this has got pacing issues in the sense that it's too bloody fast. It's like they don't give character
all the fat out of the story.
Every
single piece of it to where everything. Yeah, and it's like sometimes that's good for action scenes or faster parts of the story, but there's not one single moment of this movie that gets to linger.
Yeah, they just need more time to breathe. Particularly the heart of the first film was the relationship with Eddie Brock and Michelle Williams' character, and I feel like here there's a few moments where they could let that in a bit, and I do like the relationship with her fella that's in there as well. I like the fact that he's still there, and that he's not a douchebag. That's one of the things that I liked about the first film, is that, you know, whenever they have like a love triangle kind of deal going on, and you've got our main guy, the one we're following, the one who's our hero, then they always make the third wheel guy a douchebag to make you want to split them up and take the girl. And I like what I like about both the films, that they don't do that with this dude. He's a likable dude. He helps Venom out, despite the fact he's got no reason to. So, but I like that they have a bit more of that here. But it's just like I say, it's just like, yo, get in, get out, get in, get out, get it. For every scene, it's just like, slow down a bit, slow down. I could have done with more scenes in the prison when Brock goes to see Carnage, getting a bit more of an insight into, you know.
Yeah, why is he so obsessed with Eddie Brock? I never really got the feeling. It's like, okay, because he has to be, I guess. So it's good. You know, the action is swift. It's entertaining. The effects work is all right. It's a bit of an improvement on the first film. You know, you come out, you feel like you've been satisfied on the action stakes, but you wake up the next day and you're like, I can't quite remember what happened, but it served its purpose. So that's number 11. Sorry, there's a phrase that our buddy Sean uses a lot that I think perfectly fits this movie. He talks about how some movies don't necessarily always try to hit a home run. Some movies just want to hit a double and succeed at that. Like you always say, like, there's nothing wrong with a 3-star film. This movie is trying to be a 3-star film, and that's all the ambition it has, and it pretty much achieves that. But even with that, like you said, it's just the promise of carnage that felt underwhelming to me in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it should have been a 2-hour movie, I feel, and that kind of goes against what I often say, which is like, I'm often saying we need shorter movies. We don't need movies that are super long for the sake of it. But you know, the average Justice League. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, but it's just like we don't need those kind of, we don't need 4-hour long movies. We don't need like 3.5. You know, we don't need a 3-hour whatever. It's just.
Every Marvel movie doesn't have to be 2.5 hours.
Yeah. But on this occasion, I'd have liked a 2-hour mark, make it a bit more epic, given who we're dealing with. But no, they knew what they wanted to do. It's a 3. I think they were going, like you say, they were going for a 3-star film. That's what they gave us. That's what we got, and it's, you know, I will watch it again. I will buy it on Blu-ray. So there you go. Right. So. Just have a quick check of the comments before I move on.
And this movie was number 10 for me, by the way, but my bottom 3, for the most part, I can kind of interchange on my mood.
So Nathan Gorecki says 2 Venom movies should be at the bottom. Yeah, probably right. Brian. Aaron White, I saw Venom once in theatres and was mildly entertained, but never saw it since and never had the urge to see the sequel. Yep. The first Venom improved for me on a second watch, because I saw that after, because that did huge business at the box office, didn't it?
Yeah, it was like 800 something million.
Yeah. So that kind of enticed me to see it, and I was like, really?
I saw it just because I love the character. Like, I grew up in that era you were talking about, where the 90s, where Venom was really the big Spider-Man villain of that time. And I had a really good time with it, and it seemed like everybody else was just dogging on it. They were like, this movie is crap. It feels like it belongs in 2001, and it doesn't know what it's doing, and it doesn't fit in this modern era. And I think on rewatch, all of that negativity made me like it even more, because I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's not trying to be Avengers Endgame.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, let's go. All right, number 10. Now, Before doing this ranking, I've been watching all the Spider-Man films again, and I was supposed to see Spider-Man 3 today. It was the last one on my list that I needed to kind of catch up on again. So if there's any movie on this list that has the potential to go up or down, it's this one. I remember, like, when this first came out, I really loved it. And I did not get the hate at all. I thought there's a few obvious scenes where if you just take out that little scene and you just take out that little scene and maybe a couple more, it's easily on par with the first two. But then I think as time went on, the more you watch it, there are a few things that niggle. But for me, I think a lot of those niggles are carryovers from the first two films.
Okay.
But we'll get into that, I suppose, when we get to the other two.
You're gonna break my heart, Brian.
Oh man! But it's just one of the things people often say about this film. It's overcrowded. No, it isn't. And they say the same thing about the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's overcrowded. No, it isn't. They've got less characters in it than what the average Marvel movie today has in it. You look at Batman Begins, on paper, that film is overcrowded. It's not about how many characters you put in, it's about how you utilise them. And I think with this film, it's a case of they didn't really utilise them to the best of their ability. And I think, obviously, with regards to Venom, the main reason for that is that Sam Raimi didn't want to do Venom. He didn't understand Venom. He didn't want him in the film. And then due to studio forcing the issue, it tore the script up. And so you can see the stuff that Raimi was trying to do with Sandman and with Green Goblin. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And I agree. I think Venom should have been left for a fourth film. I think this one should have primarily focused on Green Goblin as the main villain. We'd been building to it through the first two films, and this was the payoff essentially. And then the studio kind of cocked that up by saying, "Yeah, no, but Venom. Everyone loves Venom. We want to put Venom in there." Add to that a bunch of crazy dancing scenes and.
I'm a defender of that dance scene, dude. And we'll get to it when we get to Spider-Man 2. I think you pretty much hinted that it's not going to be as high as I would put it. But like Spider-Man 2, there's a sequence with the raindrops falling on my head.
Yeah.
It's a really fun sequence, at least for me. If you hate both of them, then I get it. But to me, the dance sequence in this movie was just a callback to that, only now he's a douche. And they even had that added detail to where it's not like he's mesmerizing women. Like, they're looking at him like, who's this jerk? And it's really funny. So it's like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, even at his absolute worst, is just kind of a tool. He's not even really that bad of a guy.
The difference with them, though, is that in the second one, it's not actually a dance scene. It's just he's just kind of strolling. And it's cheesy as F, but it's just like. Whereas in the third. In the third one, he's literally dancing down the street and doing crotch thrusts in people's faces. So
I love it. When he goes in, that door opens up for him and then closes and then opens back up and he comes out in his suit and he's like, I get a kick out of it. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, I think it depends on what you consider overcrowding. Like, if you're just talking about number of characters, then no, because we're going to get to No Way Home and it has even more characters because we already have them established, because we don't have to bother with origins and tying it into themes. It doesn't take screen time. But this movie, you've got Sandman's introduction and his story, Venom and the symbiote suit and their introduction. Then you've got Harry's rise as Green Goblin. Then you got everything going on with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. And it does feel like at times the movie's yanking you in a bunch of different directions. And I'm like you. When I first saw it, I saw it with my dad and my brother, and we loved the first two. I loved it. As a Venom fan, I definitely saw that he was shortchanged a bit, but overall, I was like, yeah, this isn't quite as good as Spider-Man 2, but I still had a damn good time with it. And I did not get the hate because it wasn't like people were just realistic. Like, yeah, this is the weakest of the three. It was you talk to people and it's like this is the worst movie ever made, and it's like, come on. And no, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm of the opinion that they should have picked one. I mean, either Sandman can get yanked out of this movie or Venom. You're a big theme guy, and I know that this movie stands out to me because there's a really big, strong theme of forgiveness throughout the film.
Yeah.
Regarding Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, regarding Sandman, and the one element of the movie I really don't like, them kind of retroactively forcing that he was the killer of Uncle Ben.
Yeah, but if he didn't have to deal with Venom, then maybe that reveal would be handled much better because you wouldn't have to cram it in. It's like I feel like Sandman works a lot better with that theme. I think if you take Venom out completely, you've got much more time to develop Sandman, to work with that idea, and to tie him into what Green Goblin's doing. And he's such a powerful villain anyway. You know, when you see at the end of the film with what he's doing, then it stands to reason that he would be enough to warrant Harry having to lay down his fight and team up with Spider-Man and say, yeah, okay, I was in the wrong. Let's do this guy, and then get taken out in the process of doing so. And I just think, you have that much more time to breathe when you take Venom out, that you could then develop that plot thread. You can put clues in there that Spider-Man kind of is latching onto throughout, that so that when that reveal is given at the end, it's not just like, what? That's like coming out of nowhere, just quick little rewrite at the end. But it also comes full circle. You know, so we're keeping the elements from the first two films, and we're coming full circle with it, and it's just not executed very well because they're having to shoehorn all these other story elements in that Raimi didn't really want to do.
My favorite part of the whole movie is the way that they develop and then wrap up the relationship between Peter and Harry. I always enjoy. I mean, save for some wonky CGI that was definitely early 2000s level. In the opening act, I love the rise and then the fall of the new Green Goblin, and then him manipulating MJ and everything at the end. That whole fight that they have in his little penthouse, and I protected you in high school. Now I'm going to kick your little ass. Like I love all of that, and the redemption at the end where he comes to help his friend, and I get choked up with that movie. So I think there's a lot of things in it that people don't give it enough credit for that it does pretty damn well.
That bloody butler, though.
Oh, so bad.
Well,
I
you couldn't
watched the editor's cut, but apparently they'll take that out of there.
You couldn't have told him sooner.
You could have told me that before.
You spent 6 years watching this dude just like tear himself apart from the inside with vengeance on his mind. Never once occurred to you. Like you wait until like the most down a moment to come to him and say, by the way, sir, your father. She's like, no, dude, that's a bad move. At this point, you keep that crap to yourself. I haven't
watched the editor's cut yet, have you?
No.
Apparently it fixes quite a few things in the movie, like those scenes, like instead of the butler coming down and giving that random piece of information to motivate Harry, apparently in the editor's cut, he decides he looks at a picture of him and MJ and Peter and makes that decision on his own that he needs to change and redeem himself. Man. So I really need to watch it. For as much of a fan as I am, I'm ashamed that I haven't yet. But,
so you know what that stinks of to me? That stinks of a studio watching it and going, the audience ain't going to get it. They're not going to get what they're going to be like. What's he looking at that picture for? Why has he suddenly done a turnaround? It's like, credit the audience with some intelligence. It's like, that's what that stinks of to me, big time. Right.
Spider-Man 3, just for context, is my number 4.
Oh, big Raimi lover there, eh? Oh, see, we got the Raimi junkies who are just like all about the Raimi Spider-Man.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you saw the first Spider-Man movie? That was 2002.
I was 22.
Okay. And you said you're not a really big Spider-Man fan, but one of the things that's interesting about Spider-Man is that you have these different generations that grew up with different versions. Like you had people that grew up with the Raimi movies, like me.
Yeah, I think
era.
if you were a kid during a particular iteration, then I
12.
think you are going to be more inclined to go towards that iteration. If you are an adult throughout all the iterations, then I think you're going to have a more reasonable head on and be able to
distinguish nostalgia.
Yes, you won't be blinded by nostalgia. You'll be able to distinguish between quality and whatever the hell Spider-Man 3 is. No, I'll say this. When Spider-Man... Actually, I won't say this because I'll leave it till when we get to Spider-Man. So, yeah. Okay. Next up...
yeah, the Night Keeper's comment up or something.
Yeah. Okay. Brooke Flynn, Spider-Man 2002 was the first movie I recall seeing in theatres, so I love it and actually prefer it over 2. I preferred it over 2 for the longest time, to be honest. I for quite a while I was always like, I don't get why people say 2 is better than 1. But you'll have to see whether or not I still hold that opinion. But yeah, okay, so let's get to number 9. Number 9.
Also my number 9, so we agree.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, it's just like I said with the second one. It's it's a fairly short. It's not as short as the second one. It's a little bit longer, but in terms of modern day comic book movies, it's still a pretty short film. It just zips along quite nicely. It's quite action orientated. It's mostly built around the personality of Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock. They go for the humour. I think Sony's idea of humour and how they work with it isn't quite as well handled as what the MCU crew kind of do, but it's still pretty funny. It's still pretty likeable. It's an enjoyable watch. It's a solid 3-star film. It's fairly forgettable, but I do prefer the villain. I think what's his name? Can't remember his.
It's like Riot or something, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like a one word.
Yeah, but I was talking about the actor that plays him.
Is it Riz Ahmed?
Yes, that's it. So Riz Ahmed, who first came to my attention in the film Nightcrawler. He was fantastic in that.
Yes.
And I had no idea who he was when I saw that. I didn't realise he'd had a background in comedy and stuff. So, but yeah, I thought. He is kind of the typical douchebag, money scientist guy, but I also think that he plays him with enough, dare I say, humanity that you kind of see where this guy's coming from. There's like somewhere deep inside himself, he tells himself that he's doing this for the betterment of mankind, and he's just got lost along the way. But I think that what this film does better than the second film is establishing him as a villain, is taking us on a journey with him, seeing him go from one kind of douchebag to an ultimate like badass kind of alien symbiote kind of villain. So I just think that's done a lot better. I think the effects aren't quite as good as the second one. The showdown towards the end is let down a bit by some ropey CGI, but it's an interesting kind of little romp, really. And I like I said before, I like all the stuff with Eddie Brock and his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. Obviously, they give that a lot more time to breathe in this one. So it feels essentially a bit samey as the second one. It's just that it got there first and it allows things to breathe a bit more. So I feel like I've actually gone on a narrative journey rather than just thrust onto a roller coaster ride. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm along the same lines. I've only seen the movie once, which is the first time, so it's a good movie that I knew what it was going for. I pretty much got what I wanted out of it. I had a good time with the relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom and the humor there. It wasn't a great villain, but I felt like it was for a villain that's not Carnage. It felt like he got more screen time and got more focus. And Carnage
Yeah.
was just like, here he is, and we're just throwing him on the screen. And so the movie's not like exponentially better than the second one,
No.
just marginally. But yeah, I have a good time with it.
Yeah. Both 3-star films. It's a 3-star franchise. If we ever get a 4-star film from it as a franchise, then I'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
great.
Let's see what fights Spider-Man. That'll be the 4-star.
Yeah. Or Morbius.
Which Spider-Man? We don't know.
Right. Okay. So number 8. I'm sorry, man.
Number 8, Brian. We've got 7 movies above this.
Right, I'm going to prepare for an unburdening of hatred towards me in the comments section, but here we go. Here's number 8. Cody has left the building. Oh man,
I'm listening.
Oh, good. Yeah, people are going to want an explanation for this, but yeah.
Oh man.
Right. Okay. So, all you people in the chat, please, take
Hear
note
the man
of your
out. Hear the man out.
Take note of your age and just bear in mind what me and Cody were just talking about. If you were a kid when you saw this, I understand nostalgia.
Let this be a lesson to all of you. Dementia is the silent killer.
Oh man. What was it? But if that's below Venom 2, Brian has lost all credibility. It's not below Venom 2, so I've not lost all credibility. There you go. So yeah, look. Right, so this is what I was going to say before. When I first saw this film, it was a 5-star film for me, and it was a 5-star film for quite some time. I don't think it's aged well. I think there's there are certain movies where they set benchmarks, and some of those movies that set those benchmarks, it is a long time before other films are able to kind of break past those benchmarks. Mm-hmm. I don't feel Spider-Man is one of those. I feel it's one of those films that set a benchmark. It showed Hollywood, it showed audiences that here is how you can do a comic book movie a little bit differently. And that's why it was, when it came out, it was a 5-star film. It was a great experience. But it's one of those films that very, very quickly, I think, the benchmarks that it set started to get broken fairly early on. And like I say, that doesn't stop the film from having the legacy that it does. In the fact that it did set that bar. It's just that in the way that Richard Donner's Superman set a bar, and in the way that Tim Burton's Batman set a bar, I think it was broken much quicker. And now when I go back to it, when I revisit this film, there's a lot of things in it that just kind of irk me, niggle at me a little bit. Like I say, it's still a 3.5-star film for me. I really enjoy it, and I will watch it once every blue moon, whatever. I'm not that keen on Tobey Maguire's performance. I find him to be a bit too doe-eyed, a bit too lifeless. I think he's very. Most of the time, I just want to give him a slap. I said, just wake up, will you, man? It's just like, it feels like he's sleeping through a lot of the scenes. Like even there's even a scene where he's on the bed crying, and it's just like he's so still, and he's just like, he's just got tears, like they come up and they roll down the cheek, and he's like, and he does this little pouchy thing when he's being all upset. So I'm not entirely down on him. I still enjoy what he's doing most of the time. It's just there are times where I look at it and I'm like, yeah, he's a bit mopey, isn't he? He was always a bit mopey. And so was Mary Jane, to be honest. Now, again, back when I saw this, I was 22 years old. I thought Kirsten Dunst was pretty hot in it. I remember working at the cinema when this came out, and there was a girl who worked there who was like, I don't understand why everyone loves Mary Jane. I don't understand why everyone loves Kirsten Dunst in this film. She's so annoying. She's really annoying. And I was like, no, she's not. She's awesome. And I was just like proper defending her. As I watched this, just the other day, yesterday, this girl's words just came ringing in my head, and I'm like, oh my word, she is so annoying. Like, just Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane is so annoying. Just like the way she says things, she sounds drunk half the time, and it's just like the interactions between her and Peter sometimes are just really monotonous, really dull, really kind of like the two of them just say these scripted lines, and I'm just like, there's no it's just, whereas I look at, you know, if there's one thing you can't criticize the Amazing Spider-Man films for, it's that chemistry between Peter and Gwen. It's just, I could watch that all day long. It's great. It's snappy. It's on fire. It's just like it just moves really fast, and just, it's believable. It feels natural, organic, authentic. And this doesn't. It feels like scripted dialogue, which is what it is. And it's just like, I just feel like it's these two actors just being really slow, real monotone, real, yeah. And unfortunately, that happens a bit too much. Then you've got Willem Dafoe, who everyone like. And this is one of the things that even when the film came out, I wasn't entirely on board with. Everyone was always like, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin's just like such an awesome villain. I find that he overeggs it a bit. I feel like, for sure. Yeah, exactly. Not even a bit. It just he's full on 11. He spinal taps it. He turns that thing all the way up to 11.
Spider.
Oh man, it's all that stuff that now I'm just like. And then when he's zooming around in a Power Rangers costume, like if you've ever seen the production. Oh man, yeah. If you've ever seen the behind the scenes production designs that were done for the film,
that crazy mask
there was there were so many great designs in it that actually would have allowed us to see Willem Dafoe's face. That you look at the choices that are made from a production standpoint, and you're like, why was that decision made? Why out of all those costumes did they choose this one? The Power Rangers outfit.
That's one thing I can never defend. That suit didn't even look good in 2002.
No, and it's just embarrassing. And that one scene where Goblin's trying to get Spider-Man on his side, he's like he's drugged him, and they're talking on the rooftop, and he slaps him on the head. And a lot of it is done in wide shots, and you just feel embarrassed for Dafoe because he's got to walk around in this. And it's all on show, you know, and you're just like, oh, dude, you could have used some close-ups there just to hide some stuff. But it's just like, yeah, so that's really dated, not very well. The CGI in it is pretty atrocious now. Some of it even back then wasn't great, but you kind of went along with it because it felt fresh, it felt new, it felt they were doing stuff with it that we kind of hadn't seen before, you know, swinging through the streets of Manhattan, and it was just like, wow, that's, you know, we've not seen that. Whereas you look at it now and you're like, how quaint. It's just, and that's what it is to me. It's like it's a movie where, yeah, it was a bench it was a bar setter. It was excellent when I first watched it, for the first few times, in fact. But very quickly, as the comic book movie genre started to really take off, it very quickly became one of those films that they did better. Again, that doesn't take away the legacy. It just means that it doesn't quite hold up as well as, say, the legacy of Superman or the '89 Batman, or whatever. So
yeah, I've never clouded the fact that I'm certainly nostalgic for this, and a lot of that nostalgia leads me to the amount of love I have for this trilogy. But even rewatching it just a couple of weeks ago, I still think a lot of it holds up. I've always really loved Tobey Maguire's version of the character. I've always been pretty endeared with his version. I really enjoy Willem Dafoe's performance. He does go way over the top at times, but I also think the movie's very self-aware, campy, so I think it fits for the most part. There's lines I can do without, like the two that I just made fun of, but overall, I really like his villain. The only negative about the movie that stood out to me that I never really had an issue with, but this time watching it really stood out, was that Mary Jane's a bit of a hoe.
Yeah.
Like she's dating the obvious, like, biggest dick in school, probably figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
And she immediately dumps him, starts going out with Harry Osborn, and then right in the middle of their relationship, it's like a couple of weeks old, she starts not only making out with Spider-Man and longing for him, but also like egging Peter on. Like, there's a scene in the street where he's given obvious hints that he's interested in her, and rather than just taking it and moving on, she's like trying to dig more out of him. She's like, "Oh, you just asking for reasons?" And it's just like, how many freaking dudes do you need, woman? So that's the only thing about it that, as an adult now, I'm like, not the best representation of that character, but I love it. I mean, aside from
there are times where there's little moments where, like, little bits of shallowness feed into that as well, like when Flash shows up with a new car, and she's like, "Ah!" and she goes running down the thing. He's like, "I love it," and you're just like, "Oh,
Uncle
right,
Ben dies because he's getting a fancy car to get this time at home on his side." This is my number 2, by the way.
Oh man. And
I will say, like, some of the CGI, like, to me, it doesn't really age all that poorly. It certainly looks like early primitive CGI when they started to figure it out, but for me, for the 3 Raimi films, the third one is the only one that ages poorly on the CGI side, because they put so much focus on it. Fully rendered characters, fully rendered faces. Like, this one blends it pretty well to me.
There's the first scene where Peter he's in his crappy costume, the wrestling one, and he starts crawling up the walls. And it's just like, oh, that's nasty. Yeah. That is nasty. It's like,
turn the PS2 on.
It really does. AJ Daniels says, if you can go with the campy tone of the Raimi movies, you'll like it better. I do think there's definitely an element of truth in that. There's a lot of camp in his films.
That's the main thing that I think prevents newer generations from really understanding how landmark it was, because this really was the movie. Like, you had Blade, which I would argue most people didn't even realize was a comic book movie when they saw it. But Blade, you had X-Men, and then you had Spider-Man, and that was the one where it was like, oh my god, that blew the doors off and opened up for Batman Begins and X-Men 2, and a couple years later the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And you watch it now for the first time, and I can understand people growing up with Tom Holland or the Andrew Garfield movies and going back and going, what's the big deal with this goofy ass thing? And you had to be there.
And I was there. Like I say, when I was there,
you had to be there.
It was a 5-star film. Yeah. You had to be there when you were 12 in order for it to remain a 5-star film. But I was there when it came out, and it was a 5-star film. So take that on board when I say what I've said. So. Sean Sheridan, thanks for the super chat, mate. Would you like to have seen the James Cameron R-rated Spider-Man movie in the 90s? Rumoured DiCaprio was to be Spider-Man. Listen, I'll watch anything that James Cameron has directed.
Same.
Personally, that doesn't sound good to me. an R-rated Spider-Man. I don't think Spider-Man needs to be R-rated. If you're just taking a character like Venom and giving him a spin-off, then that, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, to me sounds like a film that could be R-rated. That's the time with a Spider-Man character that you go R. But just an actual Spider-Man film, I think they did right in going more PG kind of levels.
It fits the tone of the character.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to throw an F-bomb in there for the sake of it, it will feel foreign.
Yeah. It's just like with Batman, you can do that. He's obviously a darker character. He's an adult. He hides out in a cave for most of the time. He beats criminals to a bloody pulp. He's a dark, brooding character. Spider-Man has always been a character that relates more to teenagers, particularly high school teenagers. That was the point. He was meant to be. When you were in high school, that's why you gravitate towards Spider-Man, because you can relate to the issues he's going through. He can relate to us. As you get older, then maybe that's when you move more into like Batman, things like that. But it's just it makes sense to me to keep Spider-Man around the PG kind of angle 12. But as I say, if James Cameron's directing, I will watch it. Simple as. Hell, I've seen Piranha 2 this morning, so that should tell you something. Okay. What's that? Where he webs MJ to a bridge and tells her she needs to submit to him. What? Oh, okay, yeah.
Sounds all right to me.
I should have read that one before putting it up. I thought he was talking about a scene from the first Raimi film because of the whole bridge thing. There you go. Yeah, he did come up with the organic web shooter idea, though. I wonder why. Yeah, I wonder what purpose that was going to have in the film. It really was an R-rated one. Right, okay, so, we'll move on from that bombshell. Just get rid of that banner. And number 7 is... Spider-Man Far From Home. And as you can see there, I've given that film a 4-star rating.
It's my number 6.
Okay. So you can see where I'm going from here. I really like these films from this point on. 4 stars. That's a very good rating. Now, as you can tell, if you've been following the ranking, Homecoming hasn't been on yet, and I liked Far From Home on the first viewing a lot more than I did Homecoming on the first viewing. In fact, when I saw Homecoming the first time around, I actually wasn't a fan at all, really. I gave it a 3-star rating in my review, but it was almost begrudgingly. It didn't click with me at all, with the exception of Michael Keaton's villain. But as you can see, it's not appeared on this list yet. So that's a film that has definitely gone up in my estimation as repeat viewings and that. Spider-Man Far From Home, it's not really gone either up or down. I've seen it another 2 times since I saw it at the cinema, and each time it's kind of been that's how I feel about it. That's pretty solid. I like it. I like Jake Gyllenhaal. Again, Gyllenhaal's one of them actors. I'll watch anything with him in. If his name's on it, I'm interested. I think he makes a really great villain. Yes, his beef with Tony Stark is a reason that we've had for many villains throughout the MCU, but I don't really care because
I think it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, I feel just the fact that he employs all these people to help him carry out his plan, as he's kind of like a low rent Bond villain in many ways. He's set all these henchmen and women up in like grey overalls. You've got yourself a Bond villain. No, I like it. I think a lot of people moaned about the exposition scene in which he divulges who he is, why he's done it, and he's. But I loved that scene because he's celebrating. These people have planned this bloody thing for years, and they've just pulled it off.
Yeah, pull it off.
Yeah, and they've just pulled it off, and they're all celebrating with each other. I like that. I like seeing the fact that he's in it with them. He's not just the douchebag head villain and you are my underlings and I will treat you like crap. It really feels like a team effort. He's created this team. They've all got a hatred for Tony Stark for genuine reasons. And they've all got together and thought, right, let's do it. Let's do this. Let's plan it out. We've all got the skills. We've all got the nous to get this done. And they do. And yeah, Gyllenhaal does a really great performance either side. When he flips from being he paints himself as the hero at the beginning, and then obviously we knew he was a villain. Anyone who's read even whispers of a Spider-Man comic, if you hear Mysterio, he's a villain. Even back in the Sam Raimi era, it was touted that Evil Dead guy Bruce Campbell was possibly set to play Mysterio. There's a lot of rumours for a long time that he was going to play Mysterio. So yeah, but no, I love it. I started to warm a little bit more to Holland as Peter Parker. Still wasn't particularly sold on his friends, with the exception of maybe MJ, but that's because by that point I was growing in my appreciation of Zendaya as an actress. But I still don't like their version of Flash Thompson. I just think that's not Flash Thompson to me. That's just another geek.
Yeah,
it's just like how is that Flash Thompson? Flash Thompson's the typical jock douchebag bully. It's just definitely not Flash Thompson to me. Ned is, again, he take him or leave him in this one. I accept, I think, by this point that he's there and he's there to stay. So I just have to kind of go along with it and try and find whatever enjoyment I can out of it. But yeah, he does feel like he's there to facilitate whatever humour they want to try and get out of the situation. Other people would say forced, but yes, that's what I mean. So yeah,
I pretty much echo. Go ahead. Sorry.
The twist is good as well. Having that ending and then seeing J. Jonah Jameson on that screen at the end, and he's like, "Come on!" that was an awesome moment. Seeing him return there. But
yeah, I pretty much echo every single thing that you said. I'm also somebody, and that's the one regret that I had before I did my ranking, was that I did not get a chance to rewatch Homecoming and Far From Home, and I still want to go back and do that because I had the same response to Homecoming. I liked it, but I was like, this doesn't feel like Spider-Man. This is like Iron Man Jr., and I just never quite got over that. And it's still kind of prevalent in Far From Home. He still has to be propped up by Nick Fury and Mysterio. He still has to be given this technology, both his suits and these glasses from Tony Stark, which is a really silly plot point, but just, I have to kind of go with it. But I loved Mysterio. I loved all of the scenes where he's messing with Peter's mind and he's bringing back Tony Stark as a zombie. And I thought that's some of the most incredible Spider-Man sequences we've ever got. And as a movie that came after Endgame, I thought it was a nice little, exhale. We just had all this huge, heavy weight of 10 years. And now it's like, okay, we're gonna have one movie dealing with the aftermath where people pop back into high school after 5 years, and what does that look like? Peter doesn't have his mentor anymore, and it's still kind of in that Spider Boy era, which we'll elaborate more on when we get to No Way Home. But pretty much all around, everything that I didn't like about Homecoming, I at least tolerated it more in this one. And I really enjoyed it all the way through. So it might be one of those movies. Everybody says that I've seen that Homecoming gets better with rewatch and Far From Home gets a little worse with rewatch. And that might happen with me. I haven't seen it since the theaters, but I like it. I have a good time with it.
Like I say, Far From Home's pretty much stayed on an even keel for me. With each time I watch it, but definitely Homecoming has gone up. Jason Voorhees, Far From Home is pretty good. I appreciate Homecoming and Far From Home more now because of No Way Home. I understand Peter's arc now.
I agree with
even
that.
Even though I hated his reliance on Stark technology. That's one of my biggest gripes, is that we didn't even get one movie with him where he wasn't being propped up by Stark. So he's never, until No Way Home, he's never really felt like his own man, a superhero in his own right.
Which is a disservice to Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, whether you're a fanatic or not, he all the elements of Spider-Man is what makes him special. Technology suits and having, Jarvis, Alexa, whatever in his suit and all that, that's never what's made Spider-Man great. That just makes it seem like anybody could put on the suit and save the world.
The Nightkeeper says, I don't really like Mysterio, the villain, not because of Jake, but because his illusion stuff was pretty dumb in my opinion. I do. And this is the thing, the very concept of Mysterio was dumb to me. Before, like, back in the Raimi days when they were talking about bringing him in, I was always like, no, stay away from that, stay away. Like, if you read the history of this guy in the comics, just the very concept behind him is a bit dumb.
He's a doofy ass villain for sure.
Yeah,
like, he's very easily like the guy that you take out in the opening scene and make it look like a jackass.
Yeah, it's like, even in the 90s animated series, it was just like, what, this guy's got cubes that make illusions, and okay, that doesn't excite me much. So I was surprised by how well they played that stuff out with the drones and whatnot, and how they made it work. I think there's a certain aspect to it where, like, you've got to have an awful lot of bloody drones up there to be able to make some of these illusions work. But
we're also in the MCU with Tony Stark, where he's got a piece of technology that solves everything.
So the fact that they were able to pull that off to a point where it's like, what, I can go along with this. I can suspend my disbelief for this. They've done a good job of making me be able to suspend my disbelief, and because of that, I was able to just go with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance and his motivations and all that. So for me, he was a much better villain than I was anticipating Mysterio could ever be, to be honest. Right. Mysterio I thought was a good villain, but Jake's motivations were dumb to me. The illusions were fantastic. Again, I was on board with the motivations, especially because, like I say, you had that whole team of people behind him. There's not just one guy who spat his dummy out. This actually says something about a pre-Iron Man Tony Stark. Just the fact that he stepped on everyone, he pissed a lot of people off, and didn't treat people very well until he found himself in that cave, and it's just like that. It's all come back to bite him on the ass. Okay, so
numero 6.
Yeah, number 6. It goes.
And this is my number 7, so we're agreeing with how close they are.
Yeah, there you go. like I say, it's one. It was a 3-star film for me just about when I first watched it. I went into it. I went into it a bit late, actually. I didn't see it opening weekend or anything. And by that point, people were raving about it, saying it's like the best Spider-Man movie ever. And
Spider-Man tends to get that thing. And I don't know if you have had this experience, but like I felt like when the Raimi movies were out, everybody loved them. Like with the exception of 3. Everybody had their issues with 3, but for the most part, people loved those movies. Then you had Amazing Spider-Man came out, and it felt like the conversation suddenly changed to, this is Spider-Man. Those other 3 pieces of garbage, they didn't know what they were doing. And then the same thing happened with Homecoming, where Homecoming came out and it was like, those Garfield movies, and it was like, you were saying it was awesome like 5 years ago.
Yeah, there's definitely a weird thing that goes on in fandom, and I think just because of the age we live in, where everyone's got to voice an opinion on
everything
on social media, and it's just like, yeah, everything's got to be either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. And for me, this was just like, it was all right. But it is. I do think it's much better suited for the small screen. I think like when I've watched it at home, I watched it with my wife. Me and my wife had kind of gone through all the Marvel stuff. So this was like the new one that had come out on Blu-ray, and so I'm like, yeah, it's not my favourite, love, but you know we've watched them all together, so I'll watch this one again with you. And I really enjoyed it as I was watching it with my wife. And I think that there is something that happens sometimes when you're watching something with someone and you know they're into it, you know they're enjoying it, and it's almost infectious. You start to see things from their perspective, and it kind of reshapes stuff. And I was just sitting there watching it with her, and I was aware of how she was enjoying certain things. She was laughing at certain points, and I did enjoy it a lot more. And I got caught up with Peter's story a lot more. I felt a bit more invested with Tom Holland, and this is going to it after having seen Far From Home as well. After seeing Far From Home, going back and watching it again for like the 3rd time, that bumped it up a lot more because I felt a bit more invested now with Holland as Peter. Still not my favourite Peter Parker. It's not my favourite Spider-Man. Probably my least favourite at this point of the 3. But on a 3rd watch, I was just like, no, actually, this has improved a great deal. And Michael Keaton, every time, he's awesome. Just fantastic. I love that he's just a low rent villain. He's not world domination. He's not trying to wipe everyone out. He just wants to make a living. He believes he's owed something, which, let's face it, he is. He got royally screwed at the beginning of the film. That affected his family, or could have affected his whole family and whatnot, not to mention the families of all the people who worked under him. So he had a right to be pissed. And he made one little choice that led to a lot of other little choices, and before you know it, you're a villain. But Keaton's just awesome. Keaton was my Batman for so long, and in many ways still is. And I've loved the guy and everything I've seen him in. And I just think he makes a great villain. He's one of the best villains of the MCU, to be honest.
Yeah, he's up there. I really love the twist too. It doesn't get really brought up much, but the whole twist when he opens the door when Peter's there for Homecoming, that was one of the most genuinely surprising twists I've ever had in my life. Where he opened it, and I'm like, oh shit!
Yeah. You don't see it coming at all.
No, it's a great twist because it doesn't give you any kind of hints that it's coming. So there's no way, unless you just randomly pull it out of your ass, that you're going to figure that out. It just hits you with it.
Yeah, but it just makes it instantly more personal.
Yeah,
just the whole relationship between those is instantly more personal. And it's nice that you get a second-rate villain like Shocker in there as well. So
yeah, and they start setting up Scorpion as well in the movie, like the pre-Scorpion. But I think my expectations were kind of screwed when I watched this movie because they really heavily talked about this being a John Hughes style movie. And I remember watching the trailer to Homecoming, and I was so excited because the trailer and the way that it's cut, really feels like a John Hughes movie. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. And you watch the movie, and the movie doesn't translate that at all. The movie doesn't feel like a John Hughes movie at all. So that kind of was a disappointment that I had, that I don't think I should have walked into the movie with. But like we already discussed, it's a movie that I think is very enjoyable, and I really do want to check it out again now after seeing the trilogy and kind of going back and understanding that this was all like a 3-arc origin story in a certain way. But I always was annoyed, despite loving every time I see Robert Downey Jr., I was always annoyed that Spider-Man felt like this sidekick throughout this movie in particular, to where he couldn't really do anything without this super suit, without Tony Stark bailing him out, without all this technology. You know, he's wanting to be an Avenger, and it just kind of felt like we were missing what made Spider-Man Spider-Man. And this one purposefully avoided all of the origin story tropes at this point, to where we didn't see Uncle Ben die. We didn't get the with great power comes great responsibility line. We didn't see him get bit by a spider. They just jump you in. They're like, he's Spider-Man. You already know the story. And even though I think that was a good decision, because we'd already rebooted the film 3 times within 10 years, it made this trilogy feel like there was something missing. And we'll get to it when we talk about No Way Home, but that's why there's a moment in No Way Home where it's like, now it makes sense. Now it's there. That void is filled.
Yeah. It's a great moment as well. It's just, right. Okay. I'm surprised it's taken this long to get to this one. I think most people are going to be pretty surprised at this point. They're going to go, oh yeah, I just realised that's not appeared already. But here it is, number 5.
Lord, here we go. Oh yeah, I forgot that one.
Yeah. This is generally on most people's bottom 2.
It's my number 11.
Right. I watched this the other day, and I gotta say, I had a lot more fun with this than I did with the Raimi ones. And I think there's some proper emotional beats in it as well that really work. Not just the death of Gwen Stacy, which really is a kicker.
That's the most emotional sequence in the whole franchise.
Big time. And that's of all the 11 films. It's just like, even when that was happening, the first time you watch it, you're like, they're going to do a twist on it. They won't follow the comic book route. They're setting it up like, no, she's dead. And you're just like, and the way they do it, just like the way she falls and snaps, and when it snaps, you go,
one extra moment they threw in there where she cracks her head. You were like, oh.
Yeah. Every time, it just makes me go flinch. And it's just like, oh, yeah. I also really like this version of Green Goblin. I just, the relationship there. I think it would have been nice to have had in the first film just a little comment to say that that Peter Parker was friends with Harry Osborn. Just a little, just a throwaway line, just to say, I knew Harry growing up.
The biggest fault of this movie is that within the runtime of this film, amongst all the other things going on, we have to be introduced to the fact that they're friends, buy into the fact that they're friends, and then immediately buy into the fact that they're on the edge with each other. And then immediately be on board with the villainy side, where now they're trying to kill each other.
Which I am. And that's the key. It's like, it is a big ask. All of those things that it's asking for, and yet I feel it succeeds in all of them. Like there's the moment when Peter goes to see Harry. So he finds out that Norman has died. He goes to see Harry. Harry comes down that big set of stairs, and they have this really kind of maudlin chat where it's just like, it's just cold, it's icy, it's just like there's no kind of connection between these two. Peter cracks a no.
Harry cracks a joke. And
Yeah,
he's like,
he cracks a
there he
joke, and he goes, "There he is, there he." And instantly in that moment, I'm just won over with these two guys, and I want to see them together a bit more. And then we get to see the scene where they're talking about love lives and this, that, and that, and it feels authentic to me, and the skimming stones and that, just having a really casual chat. I like that. They have that correlation between them of fathers who essentially abandoned them both. So instantly there you go. Yeah, that would make sense as to why they would gravitate towards each other in school and become friends. So yeah, it is a lot to cram in. It's a lot to ask of us at this point, given there was no kind of hint of it in the first film. But despite those big asks, I go along. I'm invested. I'm invested in that relationship. So I do think they succeed in a great way. Now, there's a major criticism that even I have used over the years, and watching it this time around, having not seen the film for so long, I watch it now and I think actually I have no problem with this. What I have a problem with was the marketing campaign. The marketing campaign for this film was absolutely atrocious.
They showed you the whole damn movie.
It was atrocious. Right. None of the posters, none of the trailers, nothing. There should have been no mention whatsoever of Rhino. He should not have been a thing. Okay? Because if you watch the movie, if you go into it and you've got no knowledge that Rhino is in there, I think it works. It bookends the film, but it does it in a way whilst giving you a nod to a popular Spider-Man villain, but not one of the villains that's it's not a Doc Ock, it's not a Green Goblin, he's not one of the big hitters who can really go, it really has a lot of intellect to go against Spider-Man. He's one of the thug villains, the one that Kingpin hires or whoever. So let's not try to pretend that Rhino was ever like major league. He wasn't. He's muscle for hire. I think having him share equal weight on the posters and the trailers and all that, it made you think, all right, so we've got three villains going. We've got three. So you spend a lot of the film when you're first watching it, or the first few times when you're watching it, just thinking, okay, but Rhino's on the poster. Rhino's on the like he was in the trailers. He was all over the trailer. When's he? Oh, this is it. It's off. It's gone. It's like, so that's just an instant disappointment. They set you up to be disappointed. Whereas if you go into the film, have it not knowing Rhino was even going to be into it, then it does actually make for a really nice bookend. He opens up the movie as a thug. Even there, you might not know. If you're not a diehard comic book fan, like telling you that his name is Alexei, whatever it is he says.
Sixevich.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that was Rhino. I'm not a big enough Spider-Man nerd to know that Rhino's real name is Alexei Blibovich. So that to me would have been, hey, look, Paul Giamatti playing some weird Russian thug. And then I've forgotten about him. And then I've gotten to the end of the movie, and boom, he comes back, and I've gone, that's Rhino! And then the film goes off. And so that is actually, it's a really nice bookend. What buggered up that bookend was the marketing. Plain and simple.
I think that I like the idea of the bookend. I think the idea of Rhino opening the film and closing the film is a good idea. But the problem, which is one of the overarching problems with this movie for me, is that the tone of that scene just doesn't match other tones. Like, you have this really dark stuff going on with Green Goblin and Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn. We just had the death of Gwen Stacy 3 minutes ago, and then you got this cartoon character maniacally laughing, "Come on, Spider!" And it's just, it doesn't fit. Like, that belongs to a totally different movie. That would almost fit more and still feel a little foreign to the Raimi films for me. But this is a movie that quite obviously had a lot of cooks in the kitchen, had a lot of hands in the cookie jar, to where they wanted, Mark Webb obviously wanted to deal with the death of Gwen Stacy. That was a story that he wanted to tell. That was his biggest strength in the first film. and then you had the studio that wanted to show Green Goblin because they wanted to set up the Sinister Six, and then Rhino was a part of that. And you just, the movie is just battling itself. You got Electro that's ultra doofy and crazy, like right out of Batman Forever, and then you have the darkest, craziest version of Green Goblin that we've seen, which I do like the design of him a lot more than the suit for sure.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the movie, and I still have fun with it. Like, I don't think it's trash. I don't think it's gutter trash like people make it out to be. I could still watch it and enjoy it, but that's where I have the problem with the movie, is that it feels like about 4 different movies, 4 different tones, all just kind of scrambled up because Sony just wanted to. They succeeded to a certain degree with the first film and didn't learn their lessons with their mistakes of Spider-Man 3 and just said, we got to set up 5 spin-offs and 2 sequels with 1 movie. Hurry, go. And then we get this movie.
I just for me, that my biggest complaint is the whole full-on nerdiness of Electro at the beginning before he become. I think they proper over-egg that stuff. Yeah. They needed to make him a bit more human. Without just bashing us over the head by saying, hey, this is a guy who's an outcast in society. He's never seen. He even says out loud, oh, you saw me. You know my name. And you just like tone it down a bit. Yeah. However, having said that, when he does become Electro, the scene in which those eels attack him is flipping brutal. It's something right out of a horror film. It's actually, if you go back and watch that scene, it's pretty gnarly. But then when the whole, I can't remember the name of the street where he...
Times Square.
That whole Times Square sequence,
awesome.
It's a fantastic sequence.
The special effects in this movie and the colors and everything are incredible. Yeah. It's a gorgeous movie.
Absolutely, and I do actually sympathise with Electro in that sequence because it's expertly handled, plain and simple. Just the way it shows us about perception, like the way society can completely like misperceive. That's not the right word. Is that even a word? Yeah, and just like the way that Spider-Man as well, because he likes to make light of things, he makes a joke. Actually, in this particular case, it doesn't do him any favours. And it's just like, if everybody could have just settled down and said, clearly this dude's got an issue, let's help him. Then that would, and I feel like that's, you could say that's a metaphor for modern America or the modern world. It's just like let's fire first and ask questions later. But I just think that whole sequence is brilliant. And one thing that rarely gets mentioned is the score. Hans Zimmer's score for this, and he in more recent years, Hans Zimmer's been doing a lot of collaborations with people. So on this score, you've got Junkie XL, Pharrell Williams, you've got Steve Mazzaro, who's a really good composer. There's a few others as well where it's like you look at the names and it's like, wow, these are actually big hitters when it comes to scores. But that Electro theme with the
thoughts,
like it's so dark when it's coming in. You can hear it's like, they lied to me, they're dead to me, and they're just like, it's like proper mixes rock with like orchestral and kind of techno, kind of all kinds of stuff going on in there. It's I think it's an amazing underappreciated score that goes places that you don't expect it to go with a Spider-Man movie. I think there's lots to love in the film. I think people maybe jump a little too much on the little negatives and make them bigger than what they are. But when I watched this just 2 days ago, I had an absolute blast with it. The whole thing with Electro at the start aside, everything else for me felt quite on point. I think it's very underappreciated, and Andrew Garfield is definitely my favourite Spider-Man. I think he's just great, and just that chemistry between him and Gwen Stacy once again.
Certainly the best part of both of the movies.
It's great. It's great stuff.
Fair enough.
All right. Number 4. Here's number 4. Oh, that's the wrong one. I just gave that away, didn't I? Number 4. Yeah, Spider-Man 2. Number 4 for me. Yeah, just I have a lot of issues with this film when I'm watching it, where I'm just like, just little niggles where I'm just, really? There's a lot of contrivances in it. So, one, I don't understand, really, why Doc Ock is robbing banks.
Oh, I don't either. I don't either. That's a really, really stupid plot point. I 100% agree. Just go steal the shit that you're trying to buy.
Yeah, why is Doc Ock... you're prepared to go into a bank and rip a vault off its hinges in broad daylight, get caught on loads of cameras. If you're prepared to do that, then yeah, like you say, find the places where you need this stuff from and just bloody steal it.
Even to the point where he goes to Harry Osborn and he's like, I'll order the tritium for you, but you got to do something for me. It's like, bitch, pick you upside down. Give it to me now, or I'm going to drop you.
Yeah. It's just, there's loads of little niggles like that annoy me. Contrivances, like... So... Spider-Man, Peter Parker, he was there to witness the birth of Doc Ock, essentially. You know, he was there at the experiment that went wrong and fried him to this machine, and you're like, that's great, that's fine. But literally then, once Doc Ock is a thing, he's going to commit his first crime. And what is the bloody chances that Peter Parker is in the very bank where he chooses to commit his first crime with Aunt May? We've got all this stuff with Aunt May where she can't afford to keep the roof over her head anymore, and it's just like, it almost feels like a contrivance that is there just to get them in the bank. And it's just like, what? You couldn't have just heard an alarm. You couldn't have been Spider-Man down the end of the street and you hear an alarm. You get down there. Oh, look, there's Doc Ock robbing a bank, even though I still don't understand the whole reason why he'd be robbing a bank.
Yeah, one extremely silly scene, which again, I go along with it. Like, these are nitpicks that I instantly forgive, but I totally acknowledge how stupid they are. One of the ones that I actually forgot to mention in my review is the scene after he is hired to go and find Spider-Man by talking to Peter Parker. And what does he do? As soon as he finds Peter Parker, he hurls Carr into the diner. And it's like, if that wasn't Spider-Man, that dude is dead as hell. That's another scene. And even after he picks him up, he throws him right into and buries him in rubble. It's just like, damn.
It makes no sense.
Through a superhero.
And it makes zero sense that after that moment he doesn't go in and go, dude, how the hell did you just dodge that car? So, how the hell did you just dodge that and manage to get Mary Jane out the way as well? Yeah, you're Spider-Man. I'm taking you. It's so stupid at times, and like, you got to bear in mind as well that a lot of my criticisms get. They score higher points because of how highly regarded this film is. It's like, we're told Spider-Man...
I get it.
Yeah, because Spider-Man 2 is so highly regarded. It's considered to be like the standard, the gold standard when it comes to superhero movies, never mind sequels. And it's just like, you got to do better. If that's your gold standard, then sorry, but robbing banks and contrivances like that. And I've not even got to Mary Jane. Bloody hell. We thought she was bad in the first film. It's like, she runs out on her fiancé on their wedding day. which is like the scummiest thing to do.
Not only that, she accepts his proposal like moments after she gets annoyed with Peter.
Yeah,
You didn't see my play.
it's just, oh man, it's like,
The part that drives me nuts is the lack of communication. So, like, I understand Peter doesn't want her to know certain things or whatever, but there's 2 times in this movie to where he could very easily just give information, and a lot of things would be resolved. One of them is with Mary Jane, when she finally has had enough with him. In the very next scene, he's dragging his scooter back home that's been demolished. I'm like, you couldn't have just told her that you about got creamed by a truck? There's my scooter. You don't believe me? Like, so that's a moment. And then the other one is after Harry unmasks him. And he's like, you killed my father. How long does it take to say your father was Green Goblin?
I know.
But he says, there's bigger things going on here.
Yeah.
Besides you and me. She needs our help. And it's...
Like, even that. Dude, your dad was Green Goblin, tried killing me and ended up killing himself in the process. But we've got bigger things than that crap to fry.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just did it. It's like, it's not that hard, dude. Come on. It's like, I mean, the cat's out of the bag now anyway. He knows you're Spider-Man, so you may as well just lay it out all on the table. So it is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, Sean, it is not better than Dark Knight Rises. Don't talk crap. No.
Dark Knight Rises? Okay, yes, I agree. Sorry.
No.
I jumped the gun there.
No, don't agree at all. That is absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. It's just, But there's loads of little things like that. I was watching it today, and there's just a ton of stuff. I'm struggling to remember it. All that kind of stuff really drags it down for me. Like I say, it's still my number 4. You know, it's still a very watchable film. I love the action sequences in it. They are vastly improved from the first film. I'm still not overly sold on the colour palette. There's a lot of orange going on screen. I know it's meant to be like that kind of bright pop art kind of comic book popping off the page thing. It's as far as cinematography goes, it doesn't really do much for me. The turn as well with like Doc Ock, he's talking to his little things, and he's like, and they convince him to rob the bank again, and it's kind of the way he's talking to them. It's like, I'll commit that crime because there's a justice, there's
the means,
the ends justify the means kind of thing. It's just like, but he instantly goes from that scene to the next scene, he's robbing a bank and then literally just willing to just throw people off buildings and kill Aunt May and it's just like, literally. But a scene before that, he was bargaining with these things, trying to hold on to his humanity, and it's just like, but. Yeah, so the Night Keeper. From what Brian is saying about Spider-Man 2, you'd think it'd be lower. When
I say, have a movie that's highly regarded, you can hammer home a lot more your negatives because that's the argument you want to get out.
Yeah, that's my point here. I gave Spider-Man 2 a 4-star rating. I do love the film. I've watched it many times. I enjoy it quite a lot. There's so much in it that I genuinely laugh at because you're meant to laugh at it, so for the right reasons, kind of thing. I'm entertained by it. There's never a time in it where I'm not being entertained. It's just that this is, as I said before, it's the gold standard for a lot of people when it comes to comic book movies, sequel or otherwise. So if you're telling me this is the gold standard, then I have to hold it to that standard. And for me personally, there's just too many of these nitpicks in it for me to say, yes, that's the gold standard. Now, as far as Spider-Man goes, it's a really solid film. It's really good. I enjoy it. I will watch it again many times over the years. But please don't tell me this is as good as The Dark Knight. Please don't tell me this is as good as, like, Superman, Richard Donner's Superman. It's just, that's all really with regards to that. But so Sean Sheridan, well, thank you again for the super chat, mate. I love Dark Knight Rises, but things like Bruce Wayne getting back to a city under lockdown where he's broke plot holes in there too. They I've said this before, they're plot holes that are actually explained in previous movies. We're told that Bruce Wayne lives outside the city limits. Therefore, once he gets home, he has access to his tech, and we know he's got all manner of tech. So I have no problem with him getting back into the city. We also see in Batman Begins that he's got setups all around the world. We're told in The Dark Knight he's set up in China. He's able to go into China and set up there. So he's clearly got bases of operations all around the world to do stuff. So I've got no problem with him getting back into Gotham City. I think it's a ludicrous kind of there you go.
I love Spider-Man 2, and like I said, I totally acknowledge all those little silly plot contrivances, and it's even funnier that they're not really discussed. So when you bring it up, it kind of blows people's minds sometimes. They're like, I never really thought about it that way. Another one that somebody brought up to me one time that totally makes sense is the whole thing about Bruce Campbell won't let him in the theater. Like, oh, sorry, we already started. It's like, dude, you're Spider-Man. You can't find a way in that damn theater. But aside from those silly things, that is actually fun to talk about. I think it does just about everything that the first film does well, but does it better. I love Doc Ock as a villain. I love Alfred Molina's performance. I love the layers of Doc Ock. I love the way that they expand on the trials and tribulations of the relationship between him and MJ and him and Harry Osborn. I think that train sequence in the third act is still the best sequence we've ever had in a Spider-Man film. And it's a sequel that to me just does what a sequel should do. Expands on everything that the first one did, but try to do it bigger, try to do it better, try to be a little bit more emotionally resonant. So it's always been a movie that I said this in my review. It was the first movie that I saw when I moved to Georgia. And in a time in that summer where I felt like I was fish out of water, like I didn't know anybody, and my life was taking this weird turn, that was the first time that I felt at home, was going back to the movies for the first time and seeing a big movie that I was excited for. So that probably plays a little bit into it, but it just the Sam Raimi movies just are really special and important to me, and I've always liked this one the best of the three.
Yeah, it's definitely the best of the three, I think. Simon Brandy, thank you for that super chat, mate. No Way Home ended the debate over who is the best Spider-Man. For me, it's all three of them. The door is open for Amazing Spider-Man 3 now. Keep up the great work. Thank you. This is the thing. It's like from here on out, I know what your answer is, but it's like this is the thing, isn't it? Like technically, you could do Raimi's Spider-Man 4 now, alongside Amazing Spider-Man 3. There's no reason we can't have sequels to both.
And I actually think that, assuming the fact that they're not stupid when they do them and don't learn any lessons from the past, I think that now is actually a better time to follow up both of those franchises. Because if we had got Spider-Man 4 immediately after Spider-Man 3, they probably would have ran into some of the same pitfalls they have with Spider-Man 3. Same with Amazing Spider-Man 3. If Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a huge billion-dollar movie, they would have said, oh, they like having all these plot lines in a movie. They like us setting up 8 things in one movie. Or now, they've learned their lessons. They know what the overall fan reception is. Yeah, hopefully. Fan reception is for the pros and the cons of the franchises. And now I think that hindsight's 2020. If they wanted to do an Amazing Spider-Man 3 or a Raimi Spider-Man 4, they can have a lot more chances of success now. In my opinion, hopefully.
Yeah, I've got my fingers crossed for another Andrew Garfield one. I
think the chances are good.
Yeah,
chances are good.
Certainly hope so. It's just who gets to keep Tom Holland? This is the question. Is it Sony or Marvel?
Sony.
Right.
He's a Sony character. Sony is the one that's technically making these movies and owns these movies. They just are in collaboration with Marvel. And the way that No Way Home ends feels like they're getting ready to set up that split. And saying, okay, now, there's the reason why the Avengers aren't going to ask where Peter Parker is now. So now we can go off and do our own thing. And that's the reason why they've been also doing Venom movies, Morbius movies, all these things to set up all these villains. So when he goes home, he's already got this universe made.
Yeah. So basically it's going to be like Spider-Man Going Home is what the title will be, because they've all had home, haven't they, in the so right, okay. Number 3. Yeah, I really like this film. If there's one thing that lets it down a bit for me, it's the CGI on the lizard gets a bit ropey at times. And that was another thing I didn't mention about Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, people are so hooked on kind of talking up that film's flaws, they fail to say the good things about it. One of the great things about Spider-Man 2 is the action sequences. It's the action sequences in that film are filmed really, really well. Because obviously in the first film they were using IMAX 3D cameras, which are big kind of beasts of camera, which didn't really allow Mark Webb to do much moving with them. So some of the action in the first one compared to the second is a bit stale. Whereas if you look at that opening in Amazing Spider-Man 2, instantly there's a vast improvement in the way the action's being shot. It's a lot more physical, there's a lot more in-camera stuff. The airplane sequence where they're in the cockpit and they're going around, that was all because Mark Webb jettisoned the 3D IMAX cameras and went with something more, smaller, compact, that he could get into the action, and I think it was the right decision. I would say some of the action in this first film isn't quite as good as the second one, but for me, I prefer, again, it's a retread of the origin story. For a lot of people, that was the major criticism. Why are we retreading this story? But I just think that when I watch them both now back to back, this is the one that comes out on top for me. I prefer the more serious tone. I prefer Andrew Garfield in the role. I think he can emote a lot more. I think he's just a better actor, basically. I buy into the relationship between him and Gwen a lot more than I do the relationship between Maguire's Peter and Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane. And as that is such a huge element of the film, it's something you do need to get right. I won't go on too much about that, but
I like this movie. For me, I wasn't ready for a reboot. I was still kind of scorned and heartbroken the fact that they just kind of chopped off Raimi's movies at the knees. And they were already like producing this movie and writing a script as like a backup plan in case the Raimi thing didn't come out. So it just the whole thing just kind of felt a little studio product to me. I will agree with you that Andrew Garfield, he's not necessarily my favorite Spider-Man, but he is the best actor of the three. And I don't even think that's an argument you can really spend a whole lot of time on easily. You watch a movie like, what's the war movie that he did with Mel Gibson?
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge, thank you. I was going to say Heartbreak Ridge. I knew it was wrong. You watch a movie like that, and it's like, this guy got it. Him and Gwen Stacy are amazing. I like the lizard as a villain until he's a lizard, and then his plan is idiotic to me, but it's still fun to watch. I love Dennis Leary as Stacy's dad. And I think that a lot of the CGI and everything has certainly improved since the debacle that we got in the certain scenes in Spider-Man 3, and then made even better in the second one. My problem overall with this movie, though, is that it just feels so unnecessarily forced to be different, because they did it so quickly after the Raimi trilogy. They were like, we got to do everything different. So instead of organic shooters, he has web shooters. Instead of Uncle Ben saying his line this way, he says it this way. We got to make it ultra dark the entire movie because the Batman movies are successful. We got to have him do this instead of this. And everything just felt like it was the same. It was just packaged differently. And that drew even more attention to the fact that it was kind of going through the same motions. Even to the point where they give, which we didn't even talk about with the second movie, I'm curious your thoughts on, this whole mystery regarding his parents. The untold story of Spider-Man is what they kept advertising it as. And you watch it, and it's like the arc of his dad over 2 movies when he finally gets to the answer in the second movie. All the revelations that he gets is that the DNA of the Parkers is in the spiders, which, to me, who gives a shit? And then you have the second one, which is Oscorp is evil. And it's like, duh. And so that was, to me, where it's like it's an extra element for the sake of being different that never added anything to these movies.
I do think there's I do like the idea that because he used his blood in the experiments, then it does mean that only someone from his bloodline can become Spider-Man, essentially. Yeah. Because that's one of the things about the Raimi version is they've got all these spiders. I think they had 14 of them. She says at the beginning.
Yeah. Anybody can get bit.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, well, if it's that easy, literally, Peter's just been bit by this spider. You're telling me they've not done enough experiments on these spiders to know that actually when you get bit by one of these buggers, stuff happens. And it's just like, so I think that it does take away all of that kind of, there's no question about it. It's just like, Spider-Man is unique. He's got a power that is unique to him. Yes, he's been bitten by a spider, but it takes more than that. It's because of the bloodline that's there. Like somebody else getting bitten by one of these things isn't necessarily going to give him the powers. So yeah, I like Martin Sheen as an actor a lot. Me too. And I do prefer his Uncle Ben. I think the guy that played him in the Raimi trilogy, for me, was a bit. He felt like something out of a 70s TV show, like the Hulk or something, or the 80s TV show. He was just like, he was always a bit, and he was always soft light. He was always lit with like kind of soft light. And he was just, yeah, he was always very cheesy. But no, I like Martin Sheen's more kind of straight laced, down the line kind of, yeah. Yeah, for me, I just prefer it. I think I felt a lot of those feelings when I first saw it. That this feels like kind of a rehash, but it's one of those cases where you wait 10 years and then you watch them back to back, and you kind of like, I'm gonna go with that one. It's just it's grown on me. There you go. Okay. Right. So number 2, and I never thought this film would be this high ever, but there you go. Number 2. Yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse is essentially the precursor to Spider-Man No Way Home. Just I saw the trailers for this. I was just like, nah, man, I'm not sold on that animation. It just doesn't look like it's for me. But it's just like, I've got to go and see it because it's a Spider-Man film. So, let's go and see what it's all about. And then I realised that Lord and Miller were behind it, and I was like, okay, that could be interesting. Sitting down, watching it, it starts, and I'm still like, oh, that animation, man, that's just. But then
the frame rate bugs me.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so jarring. But 15 minutes in, the story and the character work, the script are so well done, you forget.
You do. You
just forget. All the stuff that is niggling you when you first start watching it, and your eyes are going funny, it's just, you forget. Because you're that invested and you're that caught up with it. And all the awesome kind of nods here and there and references and the crisscrossing of universes and bringing in characters it's just like it's all craziness, but it just works really well. And they make this character of Miles Morales someone who's really relatable. Just you're kind of like, all right, I like this guy. I don't need Peter Parker. And then Peter Parker shows up, and you're like, okay, we'll have the best of both worlds. It's just, such an awesome job, and I'm really looking forward to the second one. So,
yeah, it's a movie that the only negatives that I could ever say against it is what we just talked about, like the frame rate style. It takes me about 15 minutes or so to kind of get through it, but every time I rewatch it, I have the same 15-minute little intro phase. It's creative and it's unique, but I don't know if I completely love it as far as the style choice. And then I don't like the way that Kingpin looks. That's the only other thing. Giant body and little peanut head. But story-wise, character-wise, references and all that, I thought it was damn good. And this was a movie that I had no hope for even before I saw the trailer, because Sony had already kind of been on rocky ground, and it felt very much like they were going to Marvel for help at first before we saw Spider-Man Homecoming. Oh, but by the way, we're also going to do this side story without Marvel with animation. It was like, what are you guys doing? One at a time. and so, the inception of this idea, I always felt like this thing's doomed. And it's one of the best animated films I've seen in a long time. The only thing that holds it back in my ranking, I think I had it at number 5, is that I'm just somebody that I just don't have a whole lot of rewatch value with animation. I don't know why. Even movies that I loved as a kid, I just very rarely do I feel like watching animated films. So like when I want to watch a Spider-Man film, this might, if I was ranking them off of like rewatch, this might be in the lower part of the list. And so that's the only thing for me, but it's amazing for what it is.
Yeah, when I do rankings, I tend to do them based on what I think is the best. I don't necessarily do them based on what I think is my favorite. Like Spider-Man 2, it's got so much rewatchability quality for me. Like, despite all my quibbles with it, I'll rewatch it a lot. And I'm the same with you when it comes to animation. If there's a 5-star animation on my shelf, and right next to it there's like a 3-star action flick, 9 times out of 10 I'm going for that 3-star action flick, because I want to see real people on screen. It's just like animated movies for me, the great ones, it's like I have to be watching them before I go, I do love this. I love it. So why don't I want to watch it more? And it is just that thing. I prefer watching real people, even in a much poorer film.
Glad I'm not alone.
Yeah. Unless it's Batman, and then I'll be quite happy to.
Animated video game, give it all.
And so, of course, my number one choice, which you've all clearly guessed by now because it's not been on the list, but here's the card anyway.
My number 3.
Yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home. I put out a post when I got back from the screening for this on Facebook, just saying that it's one of the greatest experiences I've had in a cinema. There's only a few films where it's happened with 3, in fact. The Dark Knight, Avengers Endgame, and this, where, like, I mean, I think in the US you probably get it a bit more. I understand.
I've only ever had it with Avengers Endgame, and to a certain degree this, but I think my cinema crowd was not quite as lively as some of the ones that I've heard. There was only a few key moments where everybody went nuts, but Endgame was a sporting event. It was, and people stand up, and you're like, "Oh, baby!
Yeah,
he got the damn hammer!"
we had over in the UK we had this I think early mid noughties there was a bit of a phase of kind of promoting movies by showing us audience reactions from the US, because obviously it was like the film hadn't come out yet over here, so there couldn't have been UK reactions. But it was always like moments where people were going whoa, and you're just like, that's fake. People don't act like that in cinema, especially in Britain. It's like
anytime we see that type of advertisement in the US, it's 100% bullshit. It's like Paranormal Activity 6.
Yeah. I think that's what we got them for, to be honest. Yeah. It just reminds me of Scream 2, the start of Scream 2, where they're all like, whoa! And you're just
the
like,
whole damn movie.
Yeah. If people like that in a movie, I'm telling them to shut the hell up. I'm like, dude, I paid for a bloody ticket to watch a film, not to listen to all you lot muttering throughout. So, yeah, Dark Knight, Endgame, and this is where I felt connected to the audience that is around me. That we are literally having a communal experience in front of the theatre. Moments where people are cheering. Like where normally I would like, shut up! I'm trying to watch the film. It's like, no, I'm with them. I'm smiling. I might not be vocally going yeah with them, but I'm like inside. I'm like, I get you. I feel you guys. When Garfield steps through and he pulls off the mask, and then again when Toby steps through and pulls off the mask, a bit where Daredevil pops up. Well, Matt Murdock. Pops up, and it's I've not even seen all of the first season of Daredevil yet, but I do love the show. From what I've seen of it, I love the show and I love him as Matt Murdock. So when he showed up, even I was like, yeah, come on. And then you've got like some real emotional kickers, again,
by far the most emotional of the Tom Holland movies.
Big time. In case people haven't been reading that spoiler warning down at the bottom, obviously this is the newest of the films, so it's the one you're probably least going to want spoiling. So if you don't want it spoiling, get the hell out of Dodge now. 3, 2, 1, you should be gone. Because, when Aunt May dies, and she's the one to deliver that line, with great power comes great responsibility, I'm just like, oh man, that broke me.
I thought it was genius, because I'm somebody that up to now, like I mentioned earlier, I've always felt like these classic elements were just missing in the Tom Holland movies, and it just felt like we were kind of deprived of them because they couldn't do this origin story. And I've always felt that. I'm like, we don't even talk about Uncle Ben. Like, what the hell? And then you get to this movie, and I love Marissa Tomei. But she's kind of been reduced to just the hot aunt. That's basically all her role has been for 3 movies now. And when they got to that point, and they kept hinting at it throughout the movie, where she keeps saying like, "You're more than this. Like you could do more than this." And I'm like, she's kind of being the mentor role. That's interesting. Yeah. And then when they get to that point, and she literally says the line, and I was like, "That's genius. Yeah. That's why it's been missing, because it hasn't happened yet."
Yeah. Because it's like. There's certain things that have to happen in each universe with Spider-Man. And it really doesn't matter who says it or where it comes from, but sooner or later it's going to happen. It's like that whole kind of fate, destiny type of thing. And then another big moment for me that really kicked me in the gut, and we talked about this before we came on, was Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, who, again, like I say, he's my favourite of the 3. Seeing him jump over to get MJ, and like the moment he jumps, you're like, holy crap, this is his Gwen Stacy moment all over again. He's going to catch her though, and it's just like, but you're willing him to do it with excitement, and it's just like, and the moment he does, and he's got her. And you see his eyes welling up. It's like, if you've not seen The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's going to be nothing to you. It's going to be like, right, okay, great. But just it's that's the beautiful thing about the film, is that it's so tied in to the history of not just Holland's film, but the other films as well. And all these different characters get their own little payoffs. Their little character arcs are finished from the previous movies. You know, whether it's Doc Ock getting his chip fixed, whether it's Electro kind of like realizing that, you know, he
gets a moment to reconciliation.
Yeah, and it's just, and I love that moment, funniest moment.
Thought you were black.
Yeah, is like, I thought you were black, man. It's just like, you know, you come from a rough neighborhood, you help people. I thought you were black. It's just like, it's such a sad moment, but it's also really hilarious. And it's just like, and it is this thing where it's like, you know, like he's always needed a hero to look up to. You know, if you look at his character in Amazing Spider-Man 2, he's always searching for someone to look up to, and it's just like, yeah, so many great payoff moments. There's some that I'm missing for sure, but let me just Dale Strunk, thanks for the super chat, mate, really appreciate it. Favourite moment of humour in this? Mine was when Toby and Andrew didn't know who the hell Avengers were. Yeah, that's a good one. There's a lot between them, but my favourite personally, the web
shooters, where they're like, you could do it by yourself.
Right.
I thought that would be awkward if that didn't get you guys can't do this.
Yeah, no,
all this time making webbing, it's such a
for me, I felt the funniest moment was I thought that bit was funny when he says, I thought you were black. That just cracked me up. But I found hysterical was the moment when they're all talking about the villains they've gone up against, and like that these major villains, and you know he's fought one in space, and then like Garfield's like, well, yeah, I've been a bit lame now. Yeah, he like lists his villain. You know, I fought a guy in a giant rhino mech suit. I'm kind of feel a bit lame now. I just thought that was hilarious.
I fought this black alien gooey thing. It's like, I went into space and fought a gigantic purple dictator. Guy in a rhino suit.
It's all that stuff like that. It's just if you haven't seen all these movies, if you haven't been invested in each of these iterations of the franchise, then a lot of it is just like, yeah, whatever. But it's just, it does such a good job of honouring what came before in all three and giving equal weight to them. Like, when we were told that, you know, Maguire was coming back, Garfield was coming back, I was like, great, they'll have a scene. Yeah, it'll be cameos. You know, like Tom Holland's Spider-Man will be on a journey. He'll have to go and speak with, you know, he'll get a scene with Maguire's Spider-Man. It may not even be Spider-Man. It'll just be Peter Parker. They'll have like a 2-minute scene where, you know, Maguire's Spider-Man helps him on the next leg of his journey. And honestly, that's what I was expecting. If we'd have got that, I'd have been like, yeah, that's. I'm happy, you know, we got to see Maguire again, yay! We got to see Garfield again, yay! But it was so beyond my expectation, because it was not that at all. This isn't about shoehorning cameos in. This is literally about just paying off the legacy of all three of these different iterations of Spider-Man, both in the characters of Peter himself, but also the villains, or some of the villains that they went up against. You know, like ending their story arcs as well. It's just like, I all the way through it, I just had a smile on my face from ear to ear. I just felt absolutely joyous from start to finish. I loved it. Really loved it. For me, it's the best Spider-Man film. Again, I think if you left out the Garfield years because you were such a Maguire fan, this probably ain't going to do much for you. If you never got around to watching the Maguire stuff, you only watch the Garfield stuff, again, it's you're going to miss a lot. But it's just like, if you've been with these movies since the beginning, and you've been on the ups and downs and all that, and just knowing all the production hells that various ones got through, to see these three guys sharing screen time together, and not just little bits of screen time, but like loads of really big scenes.
Entire third act.
Yeah. It's so rewarding. So rewarding. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I had a really good time with it, and I was not really expecting much from it. The longer that the fan nonsense went on about this movie, the less interested I was in it, to the point where I'm like, this movie could be great, and it's still going to walk away disappointing, because just everybody's building this thing up like it's going to end the movie universe, period. And I really wish that we lived in a world where they could have kept this secret. I really wish that there was any way whatsoever they could have marketed this and produced it, and we would have walked into the theater. And can you imagine watching this movie, not expecting in a million years to see either of the other two, and they pop up in the same scene? Yeah. Like, take the fan reaction that we actually got and multiply it by about 100. And so that was the biggest disappointment for me, which isn't the movie's fault. But the first act, quickly kind of shoving the whole thing about Spider-Man's identity getting revealed under the rug. The whole setup with Doctor Strange I thought was silly with the spell. Much better way we could have gotten to this point. But once that's out of the way, everything else the movie brings is damn near flawless. I loved all the villains that were brought back. I thought all of them were either as good or better than they were before. The big one being Electro, where he almost felt like a totally different character, but he's much more dynamic of a character. But I loved having Alfred Molina back. I thought that they
Defoe was great.
Defoe was the best for me. Yeah, he was great at kind of expanding on what we already knew about Doc Ock. Eventually coming back to help him in the third act. Yeah, Defoe, to me, I've always felt like they've done a disservice to Green Goblin, because we've never really gotten that feeling that Green Goblin is the Joker for Spider-Man. He's a great villain, but we never really felt like this is the guy that's caused the most chaos in his life. And what do we get here? He kills Aunt May. Yeah, and the way that they update his costume, I thought was great. I thought it was going to be too simplistic when I saw it on the poster, but in action, where it's the same suit, but it's covered with that tattered hoodie, and it's all in Willem Dafoe's face. All the Goblin stuff is in his acting. I thought that was awesome. And the third act, it's fan service just for like 45 minutes straight. Yeah, and,
it's fan service, but it's all about character and story as well. Yeah.
When all three Spider-Man leap off of that Statue of Liberty and they all swing together, I remember the theater was just like, I mean, it was just insane. The only two things, and again, this is a movie that I can't wait to rewatch. And upon rewatch, this has the most potential to go up. This might be my number 2 next time I watch it. The only things that I did not like after the initial setup, I thought the magic Tony Stark box just sitting over in the corner that can make all the answers to all your problems was a little stupid. And once again, it's like Spider-Man can't solve anything without Tony Stark's help. And the whole thing about when they all get together and they're like, oh, we got to fight all 6 of these villains. All right, well, we'll just go in a lab for an hour and make cures for all of them. And it's like, if it was that easy, why did you cure his ass in your universe? And so I didn't quite get on board with that, but those are nitpicks in the grand scheme of all the awesome stuff that's in the movie. I really want to watch it again. You know, there's things about it that I thought could have been done a little bit better, that I might watch it at home when I don't have 1,000 screaming people, that I might enjoy a little bit better. But my expectations were here, and what I got was here. Yeah.
There is one question that's kind of left for me, which was actually brought to my attention by a friend of mine, which is that why did Electro get pulled through? Because he didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
I had the same question about Venom in that post-credit scene. Somebody said that Venom's a hive mind, so all across the different universes they all know everything.
The Venom, well, that's it. The Venom thing was explained in Venom. Okay. Let there be carnage, because because of that he talks about the hive mind and having been in Venom as an entity has been in different universes. He's kind of he's done it.
Does Sandman know that Peter Parker? I mean, doesn't even know who the hell Peter Parker is.
Yeah. Because if you remember at the end of Spider-Man 3.
Well, I know he's seen him without his face, but does he know his name? Does he even know who he is? He just sees Spider-Man unmasked, right?
Well, he talks about his father, doesn't he? He talks about when he killed his father and stuff.
Okay.
So there must be something there.
But yeah, that's a convenience.
Yeah, but yeah.
we gotta redeem Jamie Foxx. Be quiet.
Yeah. It's just like I say, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Once he actually becomes Electro, I really dig the character. It's just the pre-Electro stuff when he's just total like. I get what they're going for, but they just over-egg it. But I can live with that because some of the stuff we've had in the Raimi Spider-Man films with regards to how cheesy it is not far off, to be honest. So yeah, there we go. That's it. That's
one thing I'll add too is that this movie does one of the rare things to where I enjoy a movie so much and it leaves me on a note that I cannot wait for what's next. And I have not felt that since Spider-Man 3. As much as I enjoy the other movies, I've never left it going, "Oh my god." Because this sets up, at least if I'm reading the signs the way that I hope that I am, this sets up with the whole plot line about Peter Parker being forgotten by the entire universe. It's going to separate him from the Avengers. It's going to eventually separate him from the MCU altogether. I think there's even a chance that Zendaya and Ned Leeds are done. We're not going to see them again. And it's wiping his slate clean to where now we can get Mary Jane, we can get Harry Osborn, Norman Osborn, and he makes that classic comic book accurate suit in his apartment that doesn't have Tony Stark tech and all that other stuff. It's just a cloth suit in that classic red and blue. And when they showed him swinging through Christmas, New York, I was like, that's what I want. That's what I've been wanting for so long. We're finally here.
And on that note, thank you guys who joined us in the chat. If you're watching this after the fact and you got this far, thanks once again. Thank you, Cody, for joining me. Do check out his ranking video over on his channel. It's been a blast. Do leave your own rankings down in the comments section below this video. Click that like button. Please share the link for this video if that's not too much trouble. It really does help. It's like that's how we grow as channels, is when people like you actually take the little bit of time to take the link and share it on social media. That's how new people find us. So if you can do that, that would be very much appreciated.
Look at this guy's crazy ass ranking. Paste.
Yeah, look at this guy. Yeah, exactly. Look how much crack this guy's been smoking. But on that note, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.